Okay, so I'm going to be working on my value and intensity scales. First thing I want you to do is to make sure your name is on your paper. For this first one, you want to pick a primary color, so that means you can pick red, blue, or yellow. I'm going to use fire red, and I say fire red because there are two different types of red, and I prefer fire over the bright red. I've got my cup, I've got my mixing palette, I have my water cup, I have paper towels to dry my brush, and I have a paintbrush. Okay, so I'm going to take my lid off my cup. All of my paints are in these small 2-ounce cups with a lid, and they're labeled. They also all have the name on the top. Okay, so when you guys pour yours, I want you to make sure you have the lid on yours as well with the name. I like to give my paint a little bit of a stir when I open it. It'd be really great to use your palette knife for this. Now I'm going to scoop out some paint, and I'm going to add it to my palette. I've got some dried paint on my palette from doing the color wheel earlier. Go. Alright, that's a lot of paint on my brush. It's too much to put on my paper, so I want to either wipe it onto my palette or wipe it onto the rim of my cup. We don't want to have too much paint on our brushes. We need a little bit of paint on here on the end. Pull it down. And this is where I'm going to put my hue. So no white or black. It is straight from the cup. Staying neat and in the lines. Okay, I've got my first hue. Make sure there's not really any brush marks there. Alright, now this will dry very, very quickly, and if I need to, I can go back and do another coat. I'm washing out my brush. Alright, now I'm going to move to my lighter side of the value scale. So if you want to think about it in percentage, this one is going to be 75% red, 25% white. This one's going to be 50-50, and then this one is going to be 75% white and 25% red. Okay, so my red is going to decrease as I go this direction. But red itself is a very strong pigment, so it's not going to take very much to make that 75 or that 50. So I'm going to take some from my palette and put it to the side. Just not very much. I might get a little bit more. Okay. I should have scooped out some of my white paint before. Completely forgot. I'm going to open up my white container. And then either using the same brush after it's been washed out, or using a clean palette knife or another clean brush, I can scoop out. I'm just drying my brush over here. I can scoop out some of my white paint. Please notice that I'm scooping it out. I'm not pouring it from the cup because I really don't need too much, and I can always get more. Alright, so I'm going to start by creating my next shade of red. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go ahead and try and mix a couple, like maybe 3 of them, and see how they look compared to each other. And then if I need to change what I've done, I can change what I've done. So there's one of them. I know it's kind of hard to see on that pink paper. Now once you get your paint out of your cups, how neat you keep your palette is kind of like an artist thing. So I am not the neatest at not mixing my colors on my palette, but it's completely up to you what you want to do. Alright, so I'm going to get some more red. I think I need a little bit more over here. I'm going to take some of my white, like I said. it's out of the cups. So if I mix it on here, it is completely up to me. I'm going to mix them together. Ooh, this is looking more red. The rest is white. You don't want it to look marbly. Okay. Oh, I'm liking this one for my maybe my 75%. Let's see. Let me get it mixed all the way. There's a ton of paint still on my brush, so I'm going to try and get some of that extra paint off. Oh yeah, that's looking really good. Okay. I like this. I'm liking this one for my next one. I'm going to go ahead and actually apply this one to my paper to see how it looks on paper as compared to my palette. There's a lot of paint on this brush, so I could wipe it on my palette, I could wipe it on a piece of paintbrush, or excuse me, paper towel. This brush, I could even go with a smaller brush to fill these spaces, which I might switch out in just a minute too. Ooh, I love that. It's beautiful pink. Beautiful pink. It could be a smidge darker. I'm going to switch to a smaller paintbrush. Real quick. Got this one. It'll fit better in these boxes than the last one. I think I'm going to go ahead and add this nice pretty pink. It's about the same color as the pink of the paper behind. Love that. Trying to create a nice even application. Acrylic dries really quick, so I don't want to walk away from my work unless I'm at a point where I could take a pause. Trying to be as neat as possible, but it's okay if things like this happen. You get a little bit outside the box. Alright, I love this change. Alright, so what I'm actually going to do for my last one is I'm going to take some of my white paint here, and I'm just going to add it to where I was mixing before, in that nice light pink tone, because I don't really need this pink anymore, and I kind of mixed a lot. Ooh, it's very light, very pretty, kind of like delicate. A lot of paint on my brush. I'm going to try and get some of that extra paint off. Spread it out a little bit. Now I'm going to take this to here. I just love how fire red, the pink that the fire red turns into. It's one of my favorite colors. Nice smooth application. Staying in the lines the best we can. I like that. I think that's a nice transition in there. Okay, now I'm going to work on my shades. So these are going to end up looking a little bit more maroon. So I'm going to scoop out a little bit of black paint. Remember that black is a very, very strong pigment. It does not take very much of that, okay? It does not take much black. Alright, I'm going to get a little bit of black paint again in our little 2-ounce cups. I'm gonna scoop this out with my bigger brush so I have a little bit more on my palette. Alright, I'm gonna wash this out. We don't want to leave our brushes in our water cups. Okay, don't want to leave those in our water cups. Lightly wiping it on the edge, get off the excess water, and then I'm going to set it over to the side so it can be higher up in one of the trays. Alright, so next is, this one is going to have 25% black, 50% black, and then 75% black. So this one's going to be very, very dark. However, it should not be a solid black. It's going to be more like a very dark maroon. So for this one, I'm going to scoop some of my black. I'm going to move it over here so you guys can kind of see my mixing. So a tiny bit of black, okay, tiny bit of black. And then I'm gonna get a little bit more black and just kind of set it to the side for the next one that I mix. Again, it doesn't take very much. Alright, now let's see what happens when we mix our red with our black. I'm going to scoop some, kind of place it next to that blob, scoop some more, place it next to it. I'm actually going to get a little bit more. Okay, notice the difference in the amount of paint that I have. Starting to blend. Remember, we don't want it to look very marbly. See how dark. Goodness, I might need a little more red in this. This would be, I'm going to see how, I think I want to see how it looks on the white paper. I don't want to get too dark when we get to the next one. I'm actually going to scoop some of this to the side. Just some of it. I think I'm going to add a touch more black to that and see how much darker it gets, how quickly. That's the good thing about your palette, is you can try out all of these colors. Yeah, it's starting to look nice. It's a nice pretty brown almost. I think I'm going to let this one be my second color, and this other one I just mixed can be my third. It looks really dark on the screen. It's not quite that dark in real life. Okay, I'm moving that to the side. Then my darkest one, I'll probably just add more black to my the one I just mixed. Okay, so now I dried my brush off after washing it. Don't want it to be too wet, otherwise it's going to thin out our acrylic. Let's scoop up that and apply it. There's a lot of paint right there. Wipe some of it off. Don't want to leave those streaks in there. This is kind of thin in application. I must not have washed my, or dried my brush enough. Okay, I'm not mad about that. I think that looks pretty good. I think it might even be okay to just kind of leave without another layer. Alright, so this one here, I'm going to put my color I mixed right there. I'm going to apply that next to it. See how different it looks. Uh-oh, it's not looking too different from that. A little extra paint on the brush. It's not looking too different from that one next to it. Let's see what happens. Don't want to leave any of those big mounds of paint. It's that uneven paint application. Okay. I'll turn my paper real quick. I'm having trouble painting on this corner, it seems like, on all of them. That's better. I want us to go ahead and practice being very neat with our brush strokes. Okay, I like that. It's a good change so far we've got going. Good change happening. Alright, I'm going to add, so now I need to do this one, and that's going to be about 75% black, 25% of our red, so it's going to be a very dark maroon. Don't want to over compensate on my black. Okay, it's not going to take very much to make this darker. Touch more. There's a lot of paint on my brush right now. Alright, let's see what happens. Ooh, there we go. That's good. Very dark. Very dark. I'm going to get the middle painted first. I'm actually going to move my paper a little bit closer to me. Get these edges better. Okay. Okay, there we go. That is our first value scale. Now I'm going to do my secondary color here. I think I'm going to use green oxide. So I'll come back with that. And then, okay, so this one has to be secondary, so it's green, orange, or violet. And then intermediate is any of those double color names. So I'm going to have to mix 2 of my, one primary, one secondary, and I can do like a blue-green, I could do red-orange. I think I'm going to end up doing blue-green, so I'm going to be mixing cobalt blue plus green oxide. I'm going to show you these two sped up, and then we'll come back for the intensity scale at the bottom. Okay, with my intensity scale, we're going to be using a pair of our complementary colors, so color 1 and color 2. So for this one, you can use either red and green, or blue and orange, or violet and yellow. I believe I'll be using fire red and green oxide. That seems to be my favorite color today, I guess. Okay guys, so I filmed this separate than the other one and kind of just spliced it in here. So it's a time lapse, but then I've slowed it down so it looks a little jumpy. So I'm doing my second value scale. Now I chose to do green oxide for this one, okay, and it's going to work the same way as I did my red one. I'm going to have my hue in the middle, and then I'm going to work slowly to the left, getting lighter, making sure it's a nice solid color, so I might do more than one layer. And then after I've done all of my tints to the left, then I would go back to the right. Now you'll kind of see that I didn't really like my second one. I felt like it just wasn't right, and so I went back, let it dry, and remixed it. And now I'm going to do my shades for my green. Okay. So I'm going to let it get darker slowly as it gets to the right side. Now remember, it is very easy to make it get too dark too fast, so you do have to be mindful of that. Then, when you get ready for your intermediate color, you are going to have to mix 2 of your paint colors. So make sure you get enough on your palette so that you can have a consistent base, a consistent beginning color. I chose to do cobalt blue and green oxide and made this beautiful blue-green. And then I would create my value scale from that, okay? The main thing to remember when you create your intermediate color is to make sure that you start with enough on your palette so that you don't have to try and remix and match, okay? It's going to cut back to the intensity scale and walk you guys through that shortly. Please make sure as you finish up that you wash your brushes, rinse out your water cups, all of that good stuff. Keep up the good work, guys. So after I finished my intermediate, I didn't really like how my darker shades of my green were looking. So I went back and kind of touched them up just to make the transition between them a little bit smoother because they kind of looked disjointed beforehand. Okay, I'm coming back to you to do our intensity scale. Remember, you are using a pair of complementary colors, and I chose red and green. So I have my fire red over here. I went ahead and cleaned off my palette just so I had a nice workspace. And I've got my green oxide over here too. Both of them are in these 2-ounce cups labeled. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoop out some working paint. You can use either your brush or you can use a palette knife. I'm going to pull some out onto my palette. This way, if I go to grab my paint and maybe my brush is not clean 100%, then it's not going to get my whole cup dirty. It's only going to mess up what I have on my palette, which is fine. Alright, with our intensity scale, here in the middle, okay, here in the middle, we're going to be working a 50-50 mix of both colors. So we're changing the brightness and the dullness of our colors. This is a great option. Instead of throwing black in with a color, we can use the complement to kind of change that intensity instead of just automatically resorting to using a black to make things maybe darker or have a little bit more of a tonal quality. Okay, so this is going to take a little bit of practice, a little bit of time, and that's fine. Okay. Alright, so I have my red and my green, still in the Christmas spirit over here. And on my left side, I have to pick what my color 1 is. I want my red to be my color 1, and I want color 2 to be green. So in these boxes, whoops, a little water on my hand. These boxes, you're putting just your normal color. So I'm only going to put red here. I'm only going to put green here. I'm going to start with my red side. Just doing a nice even coat of red. Again, don't want to have lots of streaks in it. Nice even coat, good representation. Got my red, 100% red, no green. Alright, so this next one, I'm going to add a little bit of my second color. So I'm going to scoop some of my red to the side over here. Not a ton, but a good amount. And I'm going to add a touch of my green. Okay, now this is on my palette, so if I get a little messy, that's okay. I'm going to add a little bit of green. Kind of turns it just a little bit. Looks more like a brick red now. I'm going to add just a little bit more green. There we go. That's more what I'm looking for. Okay. Remember, we don't want it to look marbly when we're mixing our colors. We also don't want to have a ton of paint on our brush when we go to our paper. Okay, so I'm going to add in my second box of color here. Yeah, we want this to be neat. Let's switch to my little tan real quick. There we go. Don't know what it is about that corner. Okay, so a slight change. Alright, now for this next one, I'm going to add more green. I'm just going to mix directly on top of what I was already doing. You want to be careful not to get your mixing pile too wide, because otherwise your paint gets very, very thin. Okay, I'm going to add this to my paper. It's a little bit more toned down. Whoops. Got a little crazy there on that one. There we go. Okay. Alright, that's a good decent change in there. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to add more green because we want this one to be more of a 50-50 mix. So it's really going to tone it down. Really going to change that intensity. Kind of turns it into almost like a grayish brown. A little bit more. There we go. So guys, this is a great way to kind of get that brown, these two pigments together. Now sometimes, depending upon the type of paint you use, it may not always come out like this brown, so you can't always guarantee it. Okay. Alright, and now I'm going to start from this way and do the same thing, but I'm going to be using green as my base color. Okay, I'm using green as my base color. Alright, so I'm going to start. I'm going to touch my clean part of my green over here. looks like my brush is a little bit watery. I might let that dry and come back to it. Alright, so I'm going to scoop some of my green over here. Notice I'm not just coming back to this, okay? I'm starting a whole new mixing pile. Okay, I'm going to add a touch of red. And start blending. Should be more green in that than red. Yeah. Not the prettiest color, but every color has a purpose and a place. Got a little too much paint on my brush. It's making it really hard to get a nice even look. Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to put more green there, and I might not totally in love with that color I put here, so I might let it dry and go back and fix it. Alright, I'm going to scoop up more red. I'm going to add it to my bottom part here. I think I'm going to actually try mixing this one with the back of my brush and then wipe it off with a paper towel. Uh-oh. It's not moving the paint like I want it to. I think I'm just going to actually go back to the front of my brush like I was. And scoop it together. Ooh, I put way too much red. It's starting to look more like this again. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to let that dry. I might remix it. I'm going to get some more green. I'm going to put it here. Do more green here. I'm going to do a little bit of red. That looks more like what I wanted. Yeah, that looks better. That looks a little bit better. Okay, I'm going to scoop some of this to the side. Here. I'm going to touch more red. Oh, that red is a very strong pigment. Okay. Got a lot of paint on my brush. So I'm going to need this to dry a little bit more, and then I need this. I'm going to paint one more layer of green over this because I think my brush was really wet last time. For it to be, it just looks really thin in application here instead of as solid as it needs to. So I'm going to take some paint and come back. Oh yeah, it looks better. Much better. Yes, that is looking much better. This one, it's so thin, this one, that I might honestly go ahead, do another layer on there. Let's see. Looking better. Not my favorite, but it's okay. Alright, I still got a little bit of wet spots in both of those. Starting out my brush. I'm going to come to this one. I had a lot of uneven paint in here, so I'm going to go in and kind of smooth that out. I might even grab a little bit more, go over it. Trying to work that paint around a little bit more, a little bit better. I'm not sure. There we go. Alright. By the time this video is completed, the other two scales in the middle will be done. I'm going to record those on a different platform. It'll be easier. Right, remember, when you're done, we wash out our brushes with soap and water, and we always put them higher up. We make sure our lids are secured onto our cups. Lids are on our cups. Our tables are clean. Our palettes don't have any wet paint on them. If you're using the throwaway palettes, we throw those away, and we clean up.